Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to view Power Rangers episodes. So, I had a massive technical problem with my tablet, so much so that I had to reset it to factory settings and then start all over again. And so I'd lost a bunch of stuff, but not everything. Um, I had to go on and put out a number of just brand new visuals because, of course, there were certain things that were lost, and kind of going on and doing different background visuals because of that loss. Also, I have kind of resorted some TV seasons and done that also, before I had even gone on to try to do a video that ended up completely getting lost, which of course was this video that I already did. So that's great, right? Spending like an hour and a half on a video just to have it just be lost because of technical problems. So that's great, right? So, with that said, I apologize for the inconvenience of people, but there was also some time that I needed to spend on trying to kind of save or salvage or whatever what I could. So, with that said, let's go on into talking about these episodes. So, I am, of course, wanting to cover the Power Rangers Zeo episode, A Season to Remember, because we end up in this episode having a Grandpa Tommy going on to talk to his grandson and telling the story of the Power Rangers. And I thought that this was the corniest episode of Power Rangers ever, but there were some funny moments in this episode, and so really I could not go on and justify that this episode is a thumbs up episode. It definitely is a bad episode, but because there isn't really any Power Rangers stuff in it. It's just Mondo, and it's just the Rangers, and that's it. And this is to be the finale, I believe, of Power Rangers Zeo, is just this. Because I'm assuming that they had to go on and film another film, and that's why. So, with that said, we have the Power Rangers going into this holiday or international holiday banquet, and we have Sprocket, who is to blast the Rangers with this bias blaster. And it seems that once they've all gotten cozy with figuring out everyone's holiday, they now have to go on and make fun of it and or bash it because their holiday is the most superior. And so they have to go on and find a way to realize that all of that is a mistake because a kid brings in a poster. So, with that said, going on to the Power Rangers Turbo episode, Clash of the Megazords. This was just a fun concept or fun idea, and so I really just ran with this episode. So, we come to find out our Phantom Ranger has lost his ruby that is to go on and give him power from his chest. And so the Phantom Ranger is to lose this via fighting General Havoc, and we then go into this episode with the Phantom Ranger obviously weakened. And we have Diva Talks, whose master plan is to have this ruby go into the Turbo Megazord and have a monster be managing this Megazord to fight off the other Megazord, which of course is the Rescue Megazord, which actually looked freaking awesome. I was like, wow, like I don't remember this Zord all that much, but more than likely this Zord was to probably give them ideas for Lightspeed Rescue, which of course is the next thing that I'm going to talk about here. So, uh, this Power Rangers Turbo episode was a I'll be nice. It's a solid okay episode, and it had a good idea and it was fun. So next going on, we have Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue episode 35, and the Clash of the Megazord episode was 29. So we have a Lightspeed Rescue episode called Web War, which, in all honesty, I think I want to go and backpedal into prior episodes of this, but I really wanted to uh, do the episode with Arachnor because, like, oh my god, like this monster looks awesome, and so if ever we would want an episode where the Power Rangers were to fight off like Spider-Man, like this is as close as it gets. So we have this like spider like monster, and we have it with a number of babies, and we have Carter who is testing out a new trans armor cycle, and they seem to really have to work out the kinks and the problems with this cycle, and even to the point where Carter is to be separated from the rest of the Rangers, and he is to, of course, now need to try and save them from getting devoured by baby spiders. And so yeah, like I thought this Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue was great. I liked the monster. We spent a lot of time on another battleizer thing, or another mega battle thing that they talk about in this episode. So definitely would go on and state that Arachnor is a much must watch. It's great, but I'm also gonna backpedal at some point and go into those other episodes. So, with that said, let's go on and let's just go into the spoilers of these episodes because I think it's about that time again. So, with that said, I'm going to double five this bad boy up because I think it's about that time. Of course, to go into spoiler time, it's about that time. I'm going to spoil these episodes. So, let's go into it. So, in the beginning of the Power Rangers Zeo episode of Season 2 Remember, we have Tommy who's talking to an unnamed grandson. We'll come to find out in the later part of the episode we have a older grandson, and he of course won't have a name either. But anyways, we have Tommy who's talking about the twinkly lights and the smell of pine and peppermints and so on and so forth, and it really is the season, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here. So we all of a sudden have Tommy who sits down with his grandson who is very concerned about all the presents he's going to get for Christmas and how many it is and so on and so forth. So we have Tommy who's like, well, hey, I'm gonna like sit you down and tell you a tale, kind of like Princess Bride. So we have Tommy that is to tell his grandson a story of the Power Rangers. So we go on to showcase, I believe, at the Juice Bar, this international holiday banquet. And so we come to find out that Raymond is talking to Ernie and just how amazed he is how Ernie had pulled this whole thing off. We all of a sudden have like Rocky that's just so excited for all the food. That seems to be the kind of theme here with Rocky in this episode. So Kat ends up coming in this banquet to bring in shrimp because she's from, of course, Australia, where they, of course, would have shrimp during the holiday season. So Ernie ends up having to leave this banquet, and he's like, "Well, hey, can you guys kind of hold the fort? I need to go to the market." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, sure." So Ernie leaves, and so the guys start talking about Billy and how they're missing him. And we have Adam that goes on and states, like, well, like, Billy will kind of make his way home for the holidays, so, like, it isn't too bad. So we have like Tommy going on, and he states is like, well, man, like it's amazing how many different ways people can celebrate Christmas, and we'll kind of hear that line a lot being fed through this episode. So we all of a sudden have Mondo who is talking to Clank and Orbis, and he's very confused why like everybody's so cheerful and like everybody is to be jolly and whichever. And Clank goes on and states is like, well, like this time of the year is, of course, the holiday spirit, and everybody is to go on and have like good cheer and love. And Mondo's like, don't say the word love, don't tell me the word love. So we all of a sudden have Queen Machina coming in, and it's like, well, hey, like it seems that all the Rangers are talking about, or talking about all the differences in their culture. Why can't we take advantage of that and like see how that plays out? It's like, okay, how can we go on and do that? So we of course had the grandson interrupting Grandpa Tommy, and it's like, well, like, did the evil King Mondo ruin the Rangers' Christmas? And Tommy's like, hold on, son. Uh, like we haven't gotten to that yet. Kind of just hold up there for a minute. So we have Tommy who is transitioning and is to instead want to talk about these kind of jokesters, Bulk and Skull. And so we have both Bulk and Skull that are at their, I'm assuming their private eye location, because it seems like, unless they're like detectives now, so they're in their like detective place. Anyways, so we have all of a sudden Skull who is trying to wrap a bowling ball, and he's like, well, hey, like they need to come up with some way to help people be able to like wrap a circular speared item. And so we all of a sudden have Skull who is to kind of take this ball and kind of put it down somewhere. It rolls onto Bulk's arm. Bulk ends up like, ah! So we have Bulk and Skull who both kind of rush up, and Lieutenant Stone comes in and is noticing. It's like, well, hey, like, what are you guys doing? Like quit your dancing that you teens like to do so much. So Lieutenant Stone is to interrupt what Bulk and Skull are doing because he has a caper for them. A caper? And we all of a sudden have Bulk who's making this order for food, and Lieutenant Stone is like, no, like I have a case. And they're like, oh, okay, all right. So we have Lieutenant Stone who is talking about missing fruitcake. And they're like, missing fruitcake? Okay, all right. Like, that seems like a really crappy case, but okay, all right. It's better than nothing. So we also transition to the power chamber, and so Alpha is getting slippers from Zordon because like it's going to like warmth Alpha's circuits. Okay. And so we have Alpha who is to go on and make Zordon look more festive with a Santa hat and a scarf. And we just now see like Zordon, who is now more decorated, And Alpha's like, yeah, I spent so much time working on that. Believe me, I'm sure whoever computer people did all that really had to take a lot of time. So we go back to the holiday or the international holiday banquet, and so we all of a sudden have Raymond who is talking about his menorah and lighting it, and talking about like the whole history of it. The eight candles represent the 8 days. So we then all of a sudden are to notice that Tanya is also celebrating Kwanzaa. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I always loved going on, and when people would state that, like, oh, I'm celebrating Kwanzaa, it's like, oh, really? Like, what is that all about? What does that all entail? And like, I would kind of find out like other things. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I've never heard of that holiday before. And so Tanya, it seems, is to have her own kind of like candle setup. I don't know the technical word of it, but Tanya goes on to state that every single one of these candles represents something. And I was like, okay, wow, like that seems to be a lot of like stuff that Tanya just has to rattle off what all those candles are. I'm like, wow, okay. So we then transition to King Mondo, who is talking to Clank, and Clank, of course, has this bias blaster that is going to go on and be blasted upon all the Rangers, and they are going to need to start hating everyone other's holiday and say that theirs is the greatest for whatever reason. So we have Sprocket, like little Sprocket. We have him go on and say this, like, well, hey, leave that to me. Like, I'll take care of business. So we then go back to Bulk and Skull, who are looking for crumbs and looking for clues. And so we have Skull, who's talking about his Aunt Millie or his Aunt Mill, and talking about crumbs and this and that. So we all of a sudden have them realize that they're noticing little things on the ground, and they're looking at a red thing and a green thing and a red thing and a green thing. It's basically the equivalent of James Woods's ooh, piece of candy. It's that exact same thing. So we all of a sudden have Bulk and Skull who are like, oh, red thing, oh, green thing. And they're following these clues to lead them, hopefully, to just a good payoff by the end of this episode. But so we have Sprocket come into the International Holiday Banquet with a bunch of cogs, and so he ends up using the bias blaster against the Rangers, as they, of course, were to state that Sprocket is not welcome here, so on and so forth. Because of course not, he's a villain. So when they use the bias blaster, we all of a sudden have Raymond come in and talking again about the menorah, and Tommy's like, well, that's all well and good and all, but like, how about you go out and this is the funniest line of this whole episode. We have Tommy who's like, well, how about you go out and chop down my Christmas tree and bring it in here? And so we all of a sudden have Raymond who's like, well, hey, like, Tommy, it's like, you don't want to get mad, or like, or Santa's not going to deliver you any presents. And so Raymond goes off, and we have Rocky and Adam and Tanya are like, hey, the nerve on that guy. And so Tanya's like, you mean the nerve of my Kwanzaa? You mean the nerve of him talking about negatively about my Kwanzaa? And so we all of a sudden have Adam break into the fact that like certain people don't even like celebrate Christmas during this time, like Koreans, and he's like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. So we have everybody that's all in a huff. So we have King Mondo, who of course is celebrating. It's like, yeah, my plan is working. Yeah, this is great. So we have Tommy's grandson that chimes into this story. It's like, I don't like those machines. So we then go and have at the power chamber, both Alpha and Zordon are realizing that all the Rangers are not chopping down Christmas trees and lighting menorahs and having problems with their holidays, but there's seemingly nothing that they can do. There's no device, there's no piece of equipment, there's no weapon that they can wield to stop this bias blaster and correct it. We just have to go on because it's a spell again, kind of like the rivalry spell and a number of other things that happened in a number of different episodes. We have to go on and have this thing kind of work itself out. And so Alpha is just kind of hoping that they're going to work out their holiday differences. So we go back to the holiday banquet, and Raymond's leaving and taking his menorah and all of his stuff. And by the time he goes on and does that, we start to see that certain items are starting to vanish, like Tanya's Kwanzaa candle light thing, like Raymond's menorah, like a bunch of their gifts, like a bunch of their food, all vanishing. We have Sprocket on this like mountain of stuff, and he's like, yeah, this is great, and yeah, he's like playing around with it. So we all of a sudden have at the international holiday banquet, we have this kid who comes in and is to bring in this poster. It's like, well, hey, yeah, like, I was going to celebrate with you guys on the holiday banquet and bring this poster in so you guys can just kind of put it up somewhere. So here's the thing. This, of course, as I would normally go on and state this anyways, because it always works. There, of course, was this real Ghostbusters episode called The Halloween Door, where when all hope was lost and it seemed that the Halloween season was going to forever be ghosts and goblins and whatever wrecking the place, we have this kid who comes in with his vacuum strapped to her back, and she's like, well, I'm not afraid. And we, of course, have Winston saying it's like, well, that's not the point. And then Egon's like, wait a minute, that is the point. And then he realizes that the whole spirit of Halloween is inside this one kid, and that he's going to go on and shove this kid in front of this giant monster called Ooga Booga and tell him it's like, well, like, this is your Halloween spirit, like you thought that we had forgotten. Well, here's like the end result right here. So we all of a sudden have the Rangers state that it's like, well, there's no gifts, there's nothing here. And so we have the kid that goes on and states, is like, well, my mommy says that like the greatest gift is love. And Rocky's like, well, like you have a thing or two to learn, kid. And so I was like, yeah. Yeah, Rocky. Have the dark side flow through you. So we all of a sudden have this kid who's like, well, like, do you think I could sing? As if this is like some Susie Lou Who moment from the Grinch, where all of a sudden the Power Rangers' hearts are going to grow 2 times this day. And so the girls just start singing along about like friendship and hearts and all of these things. And Tommy is like be okay with it because he has nothing better to do. So all of a sudden this kid starts singing and it melts everyone's heart. And so they're like, yeah, like, you know, I don't know, like, what we were arguing about, or I don't know why we were arguing, but like, let's try to salvage this Christmas. So we all of a sudden have King Mondo that's upset with Clank, and it's like, well, hey, wait a minute, how did this spell get broken? Like, how did the bias blaster not work? And Clank is like, well, obviously there must have been something that had not worked out in our favor. And Mondo's like, what? Tell me. And Clank is like, well, love. And Mondo's like, don't say love to me anymore. Clank's like, well, I'm sorry, you asked for it. So we go back to Bulk and Skull, who all of a sudden are surprised by this giant fruitcake brought to you by Rito and Goldar. So they come in and they state for Bulk and Skull that they had given them this massive fruitcake as if they really like fruitcake. And so, because Goldar had another plan, he had another idea, but no one really listens to him anyways. So we have, of course, now Bulk and Skull realizing, like, oh crap, like, we can't go on and, like, cuff Rito and Goldar as these fruitcake thieves, so how can we go on and replace the fruitcake? And we all of a sudden have Skull, who whips out his foot phone, and he ends up calling his Aunt Mill. It's like, well, hey, Aunt Mill, like I have a job for you. Aunt Mill, you need to save Christmas. So we then go back to the holiday banquet, and we have a Christmas tree that arrives by Raymond. We all of a sudden have Tommy, who is to find the exact same menorah from earlier, but I guess it slightly tweakingly looks different. We all of a sudden have Rocky and Adam, who bring in the Kwanzaa candles in our estate, that they were to make sure that they try to put the right candles in the right spot, and they had to learn a lot about this, and for whatever reason. So we go on and realize that Christmas is to now be saved, and everybody is to go on and celebrate their differences in harmony. So we then go on to have Tommy's grandson needing to learn a lesson about giving and love and friendship and whatever the heck else. So we all of a sudden have Kat, who is to interrupt this whole thing, because of course she is to be Tommy's wife. And so Kat goes on to notice that there's a knock on the door, and so she goes on to open it and realizes that there's another grandson who is much older. So this grandson, of course, is to have at some point a communicator, and so more than likely he must be a Power Ranger of sorts. So we have this grandson talking and saying, it's like, okay, like hey brother, like are you ready to go? So we have the older grandson who's picking up the younger grandson, and as soon as he goes on to pick him up, he realizes his communicator is going off. Both Kat and Tommy are scrambling, thinking that it's theirs, but no, it's this older grandson, and he's like, oh, well, I guess, like, I'm gonna be a little bit busy, like, can we kind of give a rain check on kind of picking him up? And Tommy and Kat are just like, okay, like, go on, grandson. And so we all of a sudden have the younger grandson telling Tommy and Kat, it's like, well, yeah, like, it seems that he's always off going somewhere. And Tommy's like, well, yeah, grandson, it runs in the family. And at some point, you probably will find out what that all means. So that, of course, ends the episode. And so let's go on into the next episode, the Power Rangers Turbo episode. So we end up having to do quite a bit of like setup for this episode. So we have General Havoc that goes on to give Divatox this space base, because this whole space base thing kind of plays into this story. So we have this space base, and so we have Divatox who is talking to Porto and asking if the Turbo Megazord is ready. And so we have Divatox with this unusual ruby that, of course, is from the Phantom Ranger, the little chess piece that he has. I guess, like, there's a whole thing of him just having this power in his chest, and, like, well, isn't that a little bit, like, inconvenient to just have this guy have this one piece of jewel that anybody could just take off at any time and kill the Phantom Ranger? But again, like, what is convenience in a Power Rangers episode? So we have Divatox who's talking to Elgar, and Elgar is talking about how we had at one point where General Havoc had failed, and so we have Divatox just kind of slapping Elgar around a little bit or grabbing his chin. And so Divatox's plan is that she wants to combine the Ranger's powers along with the Ruby's powers to really try and take over. So that way no one else is gonna like come in her way and want to go on and kind of take over the world over her. Also known as Power Rangers in Space, Astronema. So we have at the power chamber, we of course have Justin that is scanning away for the space base, and it seems that the space base is just getting further and further away. So we have Ashley that goes on to ask if there's a way to like boost up the scanners, and we of course have Alpha and Zordon telling her no. So we all of a sudden have Carlos, who has a communicator, and he's getting a call from TJ and Cassie stating that they were able to get to the Phantom's tunnel. And so we have the Rangers, both Cassie and TJ, that go down to this tunnel and are to find the Phantom's ship. And then they find the Phantom Ranger who was kind of laying off to the side. So Cassie then grabs on to the Phantom Ranger, kind of waking him. And so we, of course, have Cassie that is asking TJ, it's like, well, hey, like, is the Phantom Ranger, is he alive? Like, is he dead? Like, what's going on here? So let me pause here for 1 second. Okay, I guess I lost a good chunk of information on my, things are going well. So, it's good, I can rift. So, we have the Phantom Ranger that is now at the power chamber, and so they realize that they can't go on and track this thing. Maybe there's a way to attract the space base to come back to Earth. And so we have TJ come up with this plan that they can go on and use a magnetic field or a magnetic device to try and pull the space base to Earth. So that's their master plan. And all they have to do is just kind of wait till the shields go down, and then they can use this device, this kind of ray, to go on and attract Divatox's space base. So we also have Cassie asking if there's anything that they can do. Ashley is a state that that will get the ruby back. Uh, we have at the space base, we have them getting ready to launch the Megazord, and we have Rygog who's telling a Piranhatron to install the ruby in the battery, and then they lower the batteries, and we of course have Divatox, who is so happy that she has the best seat in the house to watch this Megazord versus Megazord battle. As if like she was to go on and just be like eating popcorn or something, just be like, yeah, this is gonna be great. But of course she's not. So we have both Lightning Cruiser and Storm Blaster that are with their car batteries gonna go on and soup up this this power junction magnetic field device. So we have Storm Blaster that is there, and then Lightning Cruiser comes flying in, because we have to use these vehicles as much as humanly possible on this show. So, because it's car season, baby. It's car season. So, we hook the cars to this power core, and Divatox goes on to launch the Megazord. And so Alpha ends up calling Justin to let him know that the shield is now down, so they can go on and launch this device. So we have Divatox that is starting to get pulled by this magnetic field. So we desperately have Divatox that is calling for Porto to just send some random monster to help them out in this situation. And Porto is like, oh, okay, like, well, I'll just call for the Metal Mangler. The Metal Mangler comes out, and he is to have, like, head to toe all metal. And he's like, what? And he goes flying off. And so Divatox looks at Porto, is just like, nice try. So Porto's like, well, okay, like, I'll send out Crosspatch with some Piranhatrons. So we have Crosspatch who comes out to fight the Rangers with a bunch of these cogs, and we have this device being turned off and being turned on. So we have kind of Divatox is kind of getting pulled in certain directions, and so on and so forth. So we have the Turbo Megazord finally arriving here, and while it's getting kind of flown out, we have Rygog who is saying, like, man, I can't wait to see the faces on the Power Rangers when, like, their Zord is going to go against them. Oh no. So we have the Rangers going on to see that their Turbo Megazord is there, and so they're like, oh my god, like, this is great, it's back, but it looks a little bit different. Like, why is its eyes red? Why is it all of a sudden have that huge battery pack in front of its chest? What? What's going on? It can't be an evil Megazord now, could it? So we have Crosspatch and we have Robot Warriors, which I've gone on and seen these Robot Warriors kind of randomly in certain places. I don't know why that they're, like, here, but, like, it's cool that they're just randomly put. Because these, like, Robot Warriors, like, I've kind of seen them randomly in certain other seasons and certain other things. Like, they just keep continuing to recycle them somewhere. But so anyways, we have the Robot Warriors and Crosspatch who jump into this this Turbo Megazord. So we then have the Rangers that realize that they need to call off the Rescue Megazord, which was freaking awesome. And so we go on to have the Rescue Megazord who is fighting the Turbo Megazord. And we have the Turbo Megazord that whips out its sword. I'm like, are you gonna slice and just destroy the Rescue Megazord? Because that's normally what happens when you whip out a sword and just swing at him. Just completely just annihilates them. But no. So we go on to have TJ who's like, well, I'm just gonna, you know what, I'm just gonna leave this Megazord and I'm gonna go on and get Lightning Cruiser, and because we need to go on and jump onto that other Megazord and take this this power charge out. We need to take this battery out, and we need to take off the Ruby. And we have Justin who's like, well, let me go with you. And TJ's like, no, 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 no. Like, I'm going to do this alone. Like, I know how you guys all want to go on and help out the Phantom Ranger, but, like, I have to do this alone. So, we also bizarrely had the Turbo Megazord that goes on and starts, like, chucking all these, like, batteries at the Rescue Megazord, and they explode. I'm like, wait a minute, like, shouldn't you use those, like, as excess batteries? But so, we also, I think, have Justin, like, tossing out words like power module for whatever goofy reason. So, but we have the Power Rangers Turbo Megazord that goes into this turbo spin out and does this kind of, like, super kick spin thing. So, we, after that, have TJ in the Lightning Cruiser go on to get to the other Megazord, and we then find both Red Ranger, TJ, and both Crosspatch that are kind of fighting on this battery pack, and we almost have at one point where TJ is to almost fall to his death. And I don't know how many times that the Power Rangers would fall completely from their Megazord and, like, they would just demorph. Wouldn't they just fall to their death? Wouldn't that be a death fall? That seems like a very high height to just have them just, like, make it out okay. Like, that shows a wrong message to things. But so, we have TJ who's fighting Crosspatch. He ends up going on to have Crosspatch just kind of fall. So TJ goes on to grab the Ruby and then blasts the battery pack off this Turbo Megazord. And so now the Turbo Megazord is no longer evil. So we all of a sudden have the Turbo Megazord that I guess just vanishes because it's no longer in frame anymore. And Divatox is to say fire torpedoes. And we now have Crosspatch that is to grow big and strong. So we now have the Rescue Megazord that is to use its artillery power from its docking Zord. And I don't know what that Zord was actually called. I'm just going to call it a docking Zord. So we have all of a sudden the Rescue Megazord just blasting away, peppering this Crosspatch, murdering him indefinitely. And so we then go on to, after, like, that beating, we then have the Rangers who are rushing to the power chamber to give Phantom Ranger his Ruby. So we go on to have the Ruby being inserted into the Phantom Ranger, and it's like, well, is it gonna work? Like, is he dead? Like, have we lost here? Did we take too much time? We probably did, right? So the Phantom Ranger ends up getting the Ruby, and then he kind of awakes, and he's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get out of this bed. So we have both Demetria and we have both the Phantom Ranger that are going on and complimenting the Rangers and how they again had like saved the world, and we had the Phantom Ranger that is to go on and kind of leave, and Cassie's like, well, wait a minute, like I like like are we gonna see you again? And the Phantom Ranger's like, well, like I'll always be there, like when you guys need me, and like so he's basically stating it's like, well, yeah, like I'll be back at some point. So we have the Phantom Ranger that goes on to again compliment the Rangers, and then he walks off and he vanishes. And so Cassie's just like, ah. So that's how that episode ends. So now to the, and of course that episode was Clash of the Megazords, and so now this Lightspeed Rescue episode is to be Web War. Yeah. So we go on at the beginning of this and find out that it seems that Impus has now grown up and is to seemingly be his own character from that little baby. So we also but let's back up a little bit. So we have Carter. Man, am I having problems starting this episode? Carter. Let's start out with that. So Carter is with Fairweather, and however, Carter is testing out this new cycle, the new trans armor cycle, which I'll go on and I'll explain more about that later on. But so we have Carter who is with Fairweather, and like she's asking him, it's like, okay, how does this handle? How is this? How is that? And Carter's like, great, this is amazing. Da 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 da, rattling off all these blasters and all these kind of little small weapons. But then we have, of course, Fairweather that's like, okay, but we have to get to the armor mode of it. And so when Carter tests this, we all of a sudden have one piece go into Carter's chest, but then the rest of the cycle just goes off, and Carter has to bail, and he realizes that there's still problems with this equipment. So we now go on to have Diabolico that is at the Skull Cavern, and they're kind of looking for Jinx, and so we all of a sudden show Impus and Jinx who are both off, and like Impus is kind of coming into his power, and so we go on to like showcase that Impus is like kind of getting ready for his next attack. So we now go to the Lightspeed Aqua Base. So we are again to have Carter and Fairweather talking about possibly testing out again the trans armor cycle. And so we end up having Diabolico that is looking for Jinxer, and he wants to go on and set up this next monster. So we we of course have Arachnor that shows up. And Arachnor is to state that he'll go on and Alright, let's try this again. So we have Carter that is testing out equipment with Fairweather and testing out the trans armor cycle, and everything goes well with the exclusion of the armor part, and so they realize that there's still bugs to test. We go on to have Diabolico that is with Loki, and they're kind of looking around for Jinxer, who of course is with Impus, and Impus is to go on and just kind of be gaining his strength, and is to almost set his costume on fire. So Diabolico is looking for a monster, and he is to find Arachnor. Arachnor is to, of course, want to work with Diabolico on one condition, that Diabolico goes on and takes care of his baby eggs. And so Diabolico is willing to go on and do that. So we have Arachnor that is to go out onto the town and start webbing up people, and we have him go out with some batlings. So all the Power Rangers go out to assess this threat and try to take it out. And so while all of a sudden we have the Power Rangers that are taking out all these batlings, we go on to have Arachnor, who is scanning all of their weapons and is like, okay, he's collecting data. And so once we go on to have the Rangers, who are kind of done with all the batlings, they then send for the rescue bird, and which is of course like a cannon kind of weapon. And immediately when that happens, we have the Arachnor that teleports out of there and bails. So we have Arachnor who had gone on to collect a number of different people. So the Rangers are like, well, hey, if we go back to the Lightspeed Aqua base, we'll go on and be able to scan for them and hopefully find where they are. So we go on to have the Rangers make it back to the Aqua base, and we have Captain Mitchell that is talking about, well, man, like this threat seems to be very tough, but I think if we go on and we use the mega battle armor, like we'll be able to make it through here. So come to find out, this mega battle armor is to basically be like a battleizer for a lot of these, or it's some kind of mode kind of thing that they use. So we have the Blue Ranger and we have the Green Ranger, who are to have these mega battle armors. And like I had to go on and kind of look it up, and because I was very baffled or very confused when Mitchell was talking about battle armor. And so I was like, okay, what does that all mean? So we had the Rangers who were going off to face against the Arachnor, but Fairweather was telling Mitchell, it's like, well, hey, like, I still need Carter to test out this this trans armor cycle. Like, it still like needs Carter to kind of go through the motions of this. So we have the Red Ranger who splits from the rest of the other Rangers to test out this cycle, hoping that this time around it's going to work. So we have Arachnor that is terrorizing the town, and he comes flying like upside down, or he comes flying in like with like a web string like on his butt basically, and he like rappels down, and I was like, man, this looks really cool. So we have the Rangers that are coming in, and they're like, and so Arachnor is like, oh good, I can have a Ranger snack. So we have the Rangers that are trying to go on and fight against Arachnor, and we go on and even have like the Blue and the Green Ranger trying to get to their mega battle armor, but we of course have Arachnor who kind of weds them, and I'm doing the Spider-Man move, and is to have them not be able to use their mega battle equipment. So we have one of the Rangers who is calling Carter, desperately calling for his help, and so Carter is like, well, okay, like I need to leave. Like I need to go and help my friends. So we go on to have all the Rangers getting webbed up, and they end up getting taken by Arachnor. So when Carter is to be left all alone with no one really to be left here, we have Carter who's just all looking around, and we have Arachnor who is to like transform into this spider and is to crawl on Carter's back. And so Carter ends up calling for Mitchell, and it's like, well, hey, like it seems that the Rangers aren't here. And Mitchell's like, well, okay, just come back to the Aqua Base, and we'll figure out a way to go on and find them. So we have Carter that goes back to the base, and what ends up happening is we have Carter, that is unknowns to him, unleash the Arachnor out onto this base. So we have Carter that is talking to Fairweather, and Fairweather's like, okay, well, like Feyweather wants to kind of fix some of these cycle glitches, and Carter's like, well, that's great and all, but I need to go on and talk to Mitchell before I go on and do anything with you. So we have all of a sudden, by the time that Carter tries to like talk to Mitchell, we all of a sudden have Arachnor who is webbing everybody up. He's webbing Mitchell up. He goes on to take on some technicians and some repairmen and starts webbing them up. We have, of course, Carter that realizes that people are starting to get attacked. He's like, oh, like this must be this thing. So Carter then runs off to realize that like Fairweather should be like the next thing that Arachnor is going for. So he runs off to her, and we then find that Fairweather is to kind of toss her key card at Carter, and is to tell her, it's like, well, hey, like we worked out all the bugs for the cycle, so you go and you get to that. So we have Diabolico that is watching on as he's seeing that all the Rangers are to be webbed up, and we of course sort of realize that Arachnor's babies are going to hatch soon. So it's like, all right, like it seems like Arachnor has been busy. So we have Carter that goes into Fairweather's lab to find the Transarmor cycle. And so he's like, well, hopefully you worked out all the bugs. Like, it's all worked out. So, even though, like, she had just stated that there were glitches. Anyways, so, or no, wait, maybe she stated that she worked out all the glitches. Yeah, that would make a lot more sense. So, Carter is to morph and gets into the cycle, and we then have him trying to locate the Rangers, and we all of a sudden have Vampira come in with Vampiri, or Vampiri, which of course is this kind of just kind of little doom buggy kind of vehicle, and she is trying to get Carter off the road. And we all of a sudden have some batlings that are kind of commandeering some SUVs and some vehicles. So we have Carter that is to go on to blast all of these threats, even to the point of Vampira's car, her little doom buggy thing, ends up exploding, and she is to kind of be left in the dirt and the dust. So this equipment is working out very well. This trans armor cycle. So we have Carter that makes his way to this warehouse. So we have Carter that goes on to blast Arachnor's babies, and then he goes on to free one of the Rangers and tells everybody, like, tells the rest of the Rangers, like, hey, go on and get the rest of the people free. So we go on and we see, like, Joel is going on and freeing Fairweather, and I'm like, well, yeah, like, I think at some point both Joel and Fairweather were to date one another. I think there was like a whole story thing of that within the show, from what I remember. So we all of a sudden have Carter who is to leave the warehouse, and we all of a sudden have Arachnor that jumps on Carter's like back part of this cycle, and we all of a sudden kind of have Carter bump Arachnor off. Arachnor just goes flying and is to land on this spot. So, because he kind of he can easily have webbed himself anyways. So we going to have Carter that's like, well, like let's work out this battle armor and see if it works to the test. So we have the Rangers going on and morphing and seeing that Carter is in this armor. It's like, okay, great. So we have Arachnor that is trying to scan the data on this armor, and he's saying that it's too complex and he has problems being able to assess this threat. And so we have Carter that goes on to have these kind of wheel attacks, and is to go on and kind of blast away with these cannons that are on the arms of this this armor. We go on and of course easily have Arachnor being defeated by Carter. So next up we have Queen Benshira that is talking to Diabolico and Jinxer and Loki and Jinxer is not there, so it's Loki and Vampira. So we have Queen Benshira that is upset with their failure once again. Diabolico's like, well, I was so close to winning this time. It's like, I don't care. So Queen Benshira is to state that she wants her palace restored, and like, I guess that she's gonna have to like figure out a way to have these guys figure out a way to beat the Rangers. So we next go on to have Carter that is again kind of testing out this cycle again, and he finally states that the cycle is a definitive success. So everybody's just finally happy that we no longer have to give a crap about this cycle for one episode. So we have Carter that notices that Dana is to all of a sudden be afraid by this certain wire that kind of falls, and it's to be this certain kind of headset. And so Carter ends up giving Dana crap. It's like, oh, are you afraid of spiders? So we all of a sudden have Joel who grabs like kind of one of these rubber spiders to want to go on and toss this spider onto Carter to kind of get him afraid. So, because Carter is a state that spiders never bothered him, so we all of a sudden have a spider on Carter's arm, and Carter just kind of quickly just. So we then be like, oh, it doesn't bother you, huh? Right? And so they all walk off, and we have the Rangers kind of walk off in success of another episode. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. I apologize for that little issue at the beginning of this, but it's 3 episodes. It's 3 different things. At some point, I'd have this like kind of blah, but like I wasn't going to let that ultimately stop me. But again, I just had some issues. Plus, also, it's kind of like tough after a few days, kind of getting back into this and kind of remembering it all and whatever. So with that said, goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.